Let me tell you something. Respect is not a decoration you hang on the wall. It's not something you pull out only when the cameras are on. Respect is the foundation of every strong relationship, whether it's between two people or two nations. And once you have earned it, you guard it like it's the most valuable thing in the world. Because the moment you compromise on it, you set the standard for how others will treat you. That's why India walking away wasn't an act of arrogance, it was an act of self-preservation. It was about saying, we know our worth and we won't trade it for anything. For too long, the world got used to the idea that some nations should just be grateful to have a seat at the table, no matter how small the chair or how little their voice was heard. They were expected to nod, smile, and accept whatever was put in front of them. But India today is not that nation. This is a country that has worked its way up from the ground, that has survived crisis, rebuilt itself, and stood tall against challenges that would have broken others. And when you've been through that kind of journey, you don't settle for crumbs, you want a fair share of the bread. Now, some people think walking away is weakness, that it's a sign you couldn't handle the negotiation. But the truth is, walking away when your dignity is on the line is one of the strongest moves you can make, because it shows you're not desperate. It shows you can stand on your own 2 feet, even if it means standing alone for a while. And believe me, the world notices when someone does that. They may not admit it right away, but deep down, they respect the courage it takes to say no when everyone expects you to say yes. When you compromise on respect, you invite more disrespect. It's like leaving your door unlocked in a bad neighborhood. Sooner or later, someone is going to walk in and take what they want. And once that happens, it's 10 times harder to get your security back. India understood this. That's why it chose to protect its dignity now, rather than repair it later. That's why it was willing to take the heat, face the critics, and walk away from a deal that didn't measure up. You see, respect isn't just about pride, it's also about strategy. When you show that you can't be pushed around, you change the entire dynamic of the conversation. People start thinking twice before trying to corner you. They approach you differently, they offer better terms, they treat you as an equal because you've proven you won't accept anything less. And that's exactly what India has done. It has raised the standard for how it should be treated, not just today, but in every negotiation that comes after this. And here's the thing, this isn't just about politics, it's about life. Every one of you sitting here knows what it's like to be underestimated, to be told you should just be happy with what you've got. But the moment you start accepting less than you deserve, you teach the world to keep giving you less. That's why the most important battles are not always the ones you fight with your fists or your weapons. Sometimes they're the ones you fight with your silence, with your refusal, with your decision to walk away. India walking away was not about ego. It was about setting a precedent. It was about telling every partner, every nation, every leader, if you want to work with us, you meet us with respect first. Not later, not after the deal is done. First. Because if respect is missing from the beginning, then nothing else that follows will matter. Money, trade, partnerships, they will all collapse sooner or later without that foundation. And you know what? The world is starting to realize this. Some will pretend it's not a big deal, some will try to downplay it, but behind closed doors they are taking notes. They are thinking, if India can do that, maybe we can't take them for granted anymore. That's how change happens, not with speeches, not with promises, but with actions that tell people exactly where you stand. So remember this, in life, in business, in politics, you may have to give up many things along the way. But if you give up respect, you give up everything. And that, my friends, is why India walked away. Let me tell you something. The greatest power in the world is not a big army, it's not a powerful navy, it's not even nuclear weapons. The greatest power is the ability to stand on your own feet, to know that you can survive, grow, and thrive without having to beg anyone for help. That's what economic independence is all about. And India has been working for years to build exactly that. Because when you control your own resources, your own markets, your own future, you don't have to accept terms that chain you down. You negotiate from a position of strength, not desperation. For decades, countries that were dependent on others for trade, technology, or aid were forced into deals that didn't serve their best interests. They had no choice. They needed the money, they needed the goods, they needed the markets. And the ones who had those things used them like a leash. Pull tight when they wanted control, loosen when they wanted obedience. But here's the truth. A nation that is economically independent doesn't wear anyone's leash. It walks into the room as an equal. It shakes hands not as a favor, but as a choice. India's decision to walk away wasn't made on a whim. It was the result of years of building strength brick by brick, developing industries, diversifying trade partners, investing in infrastructure, and building a massive domestic market that could sustain growth even when the outside world turned hostile. When you've got 1.4 billion people and a rapidly growing middle class, you're not chasing markets. You are the market. That's a different kind of power. And let's be honest, when you can make your own technology, grow your own food, produce your own energy, and supply your own needs, you don't have to dance to anyone else's tune. You can set your own terms. You can say no without fearing collapse. That's why economic independence is not just about wealth, it's about freedom, freedom from pressure, freedom from manipulation, freedom from having your future decided in someone else's boardroom. Think about it like this. If you're broke and someone offers you a bad deal, you might take it because you need the cash. But if you've got a steady income, savings in the bank, and a business that's booming, you can look at that same deal and say, no thanks, I can do better. That's exactly what India did. It looked at the deal on the table, weighed it against its own strength, and decided, we don't need to settle for this. We've built ourselves to a point where we can walk away and still move forward. And here's the beautiful part. When you walk away with that kind of confidence, people come back to the table. They start offering better terms because they know you don't need them as much as they need you. It flips the balance of power. And the ones who once thought they could dictate now have to negotiate. Economic independence doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean cutting yourself off from the world. It means connecting with the world on your own terms. It means trading from strength, partnering from equality, and making deals that lift you higher instead of weighing you down. And India has shown that it's willing to engage, but not to be exploited. That's a message the world understands, even if they don't like hearing it. Now, some critics will say, but walking away could cost growth. It could slow things down. Maybe in the short term, yes. But think about the long term. If you keep taking deals that weaken your position, eventually you'll have no strength left to negotiate at all. That's why building your own economic foundation is so important, because it's the insurance policy that lets you make bold moves. India didn't get to this point overnight. It took years of discipline, sacrifice, and investment. It took saying no to quick fixes and yes to long-term goals. It took betting on its own people, its own businesses, its own innovation. And now that investment is paying off, not just in numbers, but in leverage. And leverage is everything. When you have it, you can shape the conversation. Without it, you're just reacting to someone else's plan. Economic independence gave India that leverage. It gave it the power to walk away from a deal that didn't serve its interests, knowing full well it had the resources, the markets, and the momentum to keep going without it. That's why this decision wasn't about being stubborn, it was about being smart. It was about protecting the foundation that's been built over decades. Because a strong foundation gives you the freedom to choose your own future. And that, my friends, is why India walked away. Let me tell you something. Real diplomacy is not about smiling for the cameras, shaking hands, and signing whatever is put in front of you. Real diplomacy is about knowing exactly where you stand, what you stand for, and what you will never compromise on. It's about having the courage to say the word, that most people in politics are afraid to say. No. And saying it in a way that makes the other side understand you mean it. That's what I call diplomacy with backbone. For far too long, diplomacy in the world was often about politeness over principles. Leaders would go into a room, nod their heads, and walk out with agreements that looked good on paper, but cost them dearly in the long run. They thought avoiding conflict was the same as winning. But the truth is, you can avoid conflict and still lose everything that matters. India understands that now. It understands that diplomacy without backbone is just decoration. It looks nice, but it won't hold up under pressure. When India walked away, it sent a message that went far beyond the room where the talks were happening. It was a signal to the world: we are not here to be managed. We are here to be respected. That takes guts. Because saying no in diplomacy is not easy. It comes with risks. People will try to isolate you. They'll call you unreasonable. They'll try to paint you as the villain. But if you've done your homework, if you've built your economic and strategic strength, you can take that hit. You can take it because you know that respect earned now will pay off 100 times over in the future. Diplomacy with backbone is not about being aggressive or confrontational. It's not about shouting louder or slamming doors. It's about calm, unshakable confidence. It's about looking someone in the eye and making it clear that your principles are not for sale. When the other side sees that, they change how they deal with you. They stop trying to push you into a corner and start thinking about how they can meet you halfway. Think about the great chess players. They don't win by reacting to every move in panic. They win by controlling the board, by making moves that force the other side to respect their position. That's what India did. It didn't storm out of the game. It made a move so strong that it forced the rest of the players to rethink their strategies.